I love seeing how you are quoted to others. I've quoted you.
Justice have a magic to change reality.
We're struggling for what more we could do.
Ordinary people have a much great power that they can even imagine.
Oleksandra Matviichuk is a Ukrainian human rights lawyer and head of the Center for Civil Liberties, which defends freedom and human dignity in Ukraine and the OSCE region. She co-founded the Tribunal for Putin initiative to document war crimes across Ukraine, including in the occupied territories. Matviichuk has authored reports for the UN, OSCE, EU, Council of Europe, and the International Criminal Court. She has received numerous international honors, including the Right Livelihood Award, the Sakharov Prize, and the Nobel Peace Prize in 2022. In 2025, she was awarded the Dutch Auschwitz Award.
Hello, my name is Natalka Cmoc. You're listening to Off the Record. I am the Canadian ambassador to Ukraine, and today I have the immense pleasure to have as a special guest, actually not a diplomat, Oleksandra Matviichuk, who is the chair of the Center of Civil Liberties. You might remember that this is the organization that won the Nobel Peace Prize, among others, in 2022. So, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
So the point of this podcast is that we wanted to talk with diplomats, and people wanted to know, not just in Ukraine, but in Canada and elsewhere, what do diplomats talk about? What do they do? So far, I've spoken mostly to representatives to Ukraine, but I really wanted you on the podcast because I believe that you are one of the most important voices internationally to raising awareness in Ukraine. I thought this would be very interesting for Canadians to understand what you do and so on. So if I may ask you just to start a little bit, just to describe to a Canadian audience, assuming that they don't know anything about Ukraine, who are you?
I am a human rights lawyer and head of Center for Civil Liberties. It's a human rights organization. We was the first human rights organization who sent mobile groups to Crimea and then to Luhansk and Donetsk regions when the war has started.
In 2014.
In 2014, because this war started not in February 2022, but as we both know, in February 2014, when Ukraine got a chance for the democratic transition after the collapse of the authoritarian regime due to Revolution of Dignity. And in order to stop us on this way, Russia invaded. Russia occupied Crimea and part of Luhansk and Donetsk regions. And that is why, being the first human rights organization to send mobiles group here, we start to document war crimes. And we are doing this for 12 years already. Because 3 years ago, Russia extended this war to the large-scale invasion, and we face with enormous amount of war crimes. And what we are doing, we are documenting something much more than just violations of Geneva and Hague Conventions. We are documenting human pain. And while this war turns people into the numbers, what we are literally doing, we are returning people their names. Because people are not numbers, and life of each person matters.
So this is very critical work, and so thank you to you and the team and other human rights defenders, because I don't know if the world quite realizes just the amount of crime and atrocities that is occurring. And I listen to your speeches. I find you very human in the way you describe the situation, and I can't turn away. And I think that happens to a lot of people when they hear you speak. We want to sit and we want to listen. It's maybe in the way you speak and in the matter, it's very convincing. It's more than just factual. So you are doing a lot of speaking around the world. When did you start speaking publicly?
I was in Kyiv when Russian troops tried to circle my city. I refused to evacuate, and with a part of my team, we continued to do our work on the ground. And when Ukrainian troops pushed the Russians from the Kyiv region, it became possible for me to go abroad and to speak what's going on in my country. But I remembered that I couldn't come because I had this very irrational feeling that if I will leave my city, I will have no city to return. So the first time when I left Ukraine to participate in international conference, it was the end of May. It was Oslo Freedom Forum in Norway, and it was the first time when I had this public speech to describe what we are going through and how many pain and suffering Russia bring to Ukrainian soil. And I think that we lost something very essential when we speak about Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, because when I participate in different expert meetings and seminars or public discussions, people mostly concentrated on geopolitical interests, on some economic data, on some military battles, Putin's visions of our own history, of Russia's territorial claims, but they lost human dimension. So I see my task to return human dimension.
Mm-hmm. The human dimension. And I co-chair the Human Dimension Working Group, which is a group of ambassadors that are trying to raise awareness to this, right, in terms of returning detained civilians, children, and prisoners of war. This is something you speak about often as well. How do you interview people who are returned, or do you interview families? How do you collect information for those who were captive?
When the war started in 2014, we concentrated not on all forms of war crimes, but mostly on illegal practice of detention, sexual violence, and killing civilians in the occupied territories. And from 2014, just in 1 year, I interviewed hundreds of people who survived Russian captivity, and they told me horrible stories, how they were beaten, raped, smashed into wooden boxes, their fingers were cut, their nails were torn away, their nails were drilled, they were electrically shocked through their genitalia. One young girl told me how she was forced to write with her own blood. Another woman told me how her eye was dragged out with a spoon. So it was horrible stories, and we mostly interviewed people who went through the hell, and this was our main source of information. But when large-scale war started, we faced with enormous amount of different crimes, and in order to be more effective, we united our efforts with dozens of organizations from different regions. We created all Ukrainian network of local documentators and covered the whole country, including the occupied territories. And now in our database of Tribunal for Putin initiative, this is the name of our initiative, we jointly recorded more than 89,000 episodes of war crimes, which is a huge amount.
It's a devastatingly sad, huge amount. Yes.
But still just a tip of iceberg. And now we use different methods because we collect every criminal episodes which can be qualified as a war crimes. And plus to interview of victims and witness, we analyze open data with further verification. We send mobile groups to examine what's going on, what's happened. If something happened in non-occupied territories, which is under control of Ukrainian government. For example, Russia hit the biggest children's hospital in the Kyiv, Ahmadit. Our local documentators are able very quickly to come, to make their own photos, videos, to speak with people, to describe what's happened, and put everything in a database. So now this is how we are working. And what about me? Unfortunately, because of a lot of travels, I'm not able to do documentation by myself as in previous years. And that is why I feel sometimes guilty, because it's always like this. When you in Canada, for example, and enjoying peaceful morning, you always feel guilty because your colleagues, your family in Kyiv under bombardment, doing their work.
But on the other hand, you are raising awareness to an issue that is not well known, and I'm finding people almost turn away from it. I've even tested it on my own social post. What I would post something happy, and then I would post something about a return or a call for a return of a prisoner of war, just to see who's reacting to what. The positive ones are always getting far quicker posts. I think people are finding it difficult, but I believe that we can't not keep raising awareness and not keep talking about it. And so I believe that the work you're doing is really important because you were in Canada. You were in Canada last year, and I believe you're going again. Is that correct? People do sign up to hear you speak. So you are in many ways more effective than social media in being able to reach more people to make them aware of this.
I know that it's important.
That's the reality of our life here.
Yeah, but it's good that it's over.
Yes.
I know that it's important because we also have to acknowledge that this war has not just military, but also informational dimension. And this dimension has no limitation in national borders. This is a battle for hearts and minds of people. And first, which Russia tried to kill in this war is truth. So it's important to tell the truth. And I'm not a politician. I speak about what we are doing, about human lives in this war. And that's why it's convincing, because you can argue having different geopolitical perspectives, but you can't argue when you hear the story of 10-year-old boy Andriy, whose parents were deliberately hit by Russian tanks in civilian car, and this 10-year-old boy Andriy saw how his mother burned alive in the civilian cars, because there is no justification for such kind of actions. It's not about geopolitics, it's about something very human. But as I understood, because I also reflected about this, it's a very human feeling to feel guilty when the danger is approaching to your family and your beloved people. And because you want just to be here, you can't stop this danger, but you want to share it.
I know it's not comparable, but just to compare just from my world perspective, as a diplomat, as the ambassador here, when I leave, because we have to leave, we have to leave the country every few months as a requirement of our posting. And when I leave, I feel incredibly guilty when I hear the alerts or the explosions. I think of the team here, and what am I doing? What kind of leader am I to have left the country while they're still there, to be able to walk around and buy a coffee, sleep well? So, and if I feel that, I can only imagine what Ukrainians feel like when they leave. So it is an overwhelming responsibility. And I don't know, I've had many people explain this, but it's that moment, and I felt it myself, when you're on the train, you cross over to Poland, and you look around, people are walking, you see the planes in the sky, and you're like, how is this fair? I actually have felt deep anger about it. So I hope that you're able to overcome that feeling, because again, I cannot emphasize enough how much I'm grateful for the work that you do. I see how effective you are. I love seeing how you are quoted to others. I've quoted you. One of the quotes that I thought is just super simple but super powerful is when you say, and if I misquote you, correct me, but occupation is just another form of war. Why do I think this sentence hit me so much? It's because, as you say, there's a lot of analysis happening in the sort of political levels in terms of how do we end the war? How do we negotiate? And that often comes up. And you bring to the attention that it isn't about border, it is about the people. But I will let you describe it because you describe it very, very effectively.
I still see that it is a huge problem that people start to confuse peace and occupation. Because we, being in Ukraine, we dream about peace. The war is horrible. It probably is the most horrible thing which just can happen in a human life. But peace doesn't come when country which was invaded stop fighting and defending itself. It's not peace, it's occupation. And occupation, it's also horrible. It's the same war, just in another form. Mm-hmm. Because occupation, it's not just changing one state flag to another. Occupation means enforced disappearances, torture, rape, denial of your identity, forcible adoption of your own children, filtration camps, and mass graves. People who live under Russian occupation, they have no tools how to defend their rights, their freedom, their property, their lives, their children, their beloved ones. And sometimes I hear such thoughts that, occupation is not in line with international law, but at least it's better than war. Mm-hmm. Occupation is the same war. People who say like this, they think that occupation at least decrease human suffering. Unfortunately, mm-hmm. It's not true. Occupation doesn't decrease human suffering. Occupation just makes human suffering invisible. This summer, I had a meeting, very special for me, meeting with a small girl, mm-hmm. Approximately 5-year-old. She from occupied territories, and her mother was illegally abducted and detained. Her mother is civilian. And I know the case of her mother. It's a horrible case because she went through the multiple gang rape mm-hmm. in detention, and now she was legally transferred to Russia, where she was accused in fabricated criminal case, and she's going to trial. So it's a very difficult case, which unfortunately widespread practice. And probably someone tell to this girl that I'm a special person, being a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, and she still remembered her mother, and she came to me, hugged me, and started crying. She cried and asked me, please return my mom. And I feel myself broken because I'm an experienced human rights lawyer. I know pretty well UN system, OSCE system, Council of Europe system, all these legal mechanisms. I had a rather solid knowledge and working with war crimes, but I have no tools how to return her mom immediately. And this is our reality. And I think it's very important to humanize this story of our battle for our freedom and human rights. Just telling and sharing this responsibility, because it's not just my problem that I, being an experienced lawyer, I have no tools how to return mother to her 5-year-old daughter. It's our common problem as international community that nothing can stop Russia.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about occupation being another form of war. Another thing you speak about very clearly is the importance of justice to occur for the war to truly end. What does that look like? But what would you like to see?
I would like to see the break of circle of impunity which Russia enjoyed for decades. Because all this hell which we now face in Ukraine, it's a result of total impunity which Russia enjoyed for decades. Russians commit horrible crimes in Chechnya, in Moldova, in Georgia, in Mali, in Libya, in Syria, in other countries of the world. They have never been punished. They believe they can do whatever they want. When I told about the story of children writer Volodymyr Vakulenko, who was illegally abducted, tortured to death, when people ask me why Russians killed this children writer, my answer is simple: because they could. Because they have never been punished before for such kind of actions. Because we don't understand something important about justice. People see justice from the narrow perspective, like something which had impact to the past because we persecuted people for something which they have already done, or something which will have impact to the future, because it sent a strong signal: if you commit something similar, you will be also persecuted. But justice have a magic to change reality. How it works? If we start decisive legal actions and send the signal to Russians, even if part of Russians start to be doubt that probably this time they will not avoid responsibility, that they will be punished for their actions, for their decisions, that they will not hide under the figure of abstract Putin because they are also responsible. Even if part of Russians start to have such doubt, this doubt will be converted in chilling effect of brutality, of human rights violations. And because we speak about ongoing war, it means that with decisive legal actions, we can save thousands and thousands of lives.
Yeah, very important. And you speak about this in many forums, including you have access to leaders around the world. You spoke to my previous Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, when you were there a year ago, I imagine. How do you make good use of your time when you have one-on-one opportunity with these world leaders? What do you say to them?
It depends of the country and the type of world leader, because different countries can be useful in different ways. Some countries are very close to Russia and they still have this neutral position, which is not neutrality, because you can't be neutral to the human suffering and violations of international law. It's indifference. And my main message to such countries is, okay, you are in close relation with Russians, but you can use these relations, for example, to help us to return deported children. If you can call to Putin and to tell him that it's unhuman practice, it's not something appropriate in 21st century, we will be very grateful. Just let him know that you are aware of this crime and you want him to stop. So it depends. In 2022, I found myself in a very weird situation that when I had meetings with different leaders of different countries, my main message was about weapons. And it was weird because it's not something which you expect to hear from the human rights lawyer. I explain that I have no other tools how to stop Russian atrocities, because Russians killed unarmed people, and Ukraine has legitimate right for self-defense, and we are ready to defend our children, our people, our country, our democratic future, but we need weapons to do this effectively. And that's why, even being a human rights lawyer, I have to speak about this.
Yes. So As I mentioned earlier, I co-chair the Human Dimension Working Group of Ambassadors here in Kyiv. We always ask ourselves, what more could we do? So we are in Kyiv. What advice would you give us?
First, let me use this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude for everything which you are doing. And it's very important that you are here in this dramatic time of our history, that we are all together hearing this notification of air sirens. And thank you for everything which you are doing. We are not taking it for granted. I am grateful from the bottom of my heart. And I'm not in position to tell a group of ambassadors what they have.
I'm inviting you to, because I'm inviting you because we're struggling for what more we could do. So we're trying to be more creative. We're trying to understand. So I'm giving you this opportunity as truly as an opportunity to say, do you find that awareness campaigns are working, or advocate, or have you seen that certain advocate activities that we've done are more effective than others? So I'm just opening the invitation, but if nothing really comes to mind, that's okay. But I'm giving you this opportunity because you have ambassadors who are eager to do more.
I will use this opportunity and probably will mention several things. First, it's very important to help to amplify Ukrainian voices in the country and in abroad. And ambassadors can do a lot to help to do it, with organizing special event or with reaching their Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the country to organize meetings or something else, and different forms how to amplify the voice of Ukrainians, but it's very important because in our 21st century, when we live in post-information era, people start to lose trust because there are a lot of fakes and disinformation in internet and social networks, but they still trust people, and that's why it's important to amplify this voice. Also, I think it's very important to support local democracy in Ukraine, because local democracy is something which makes us different from Russia. Our survival source is not in presidential administration like in Russia. Our survival source is in local democracy, in freedom of speech, in agency of people, in their belief that ordinary people can do extraordinary things and their efforts matters. And that's why it's important to open Ukraine from the regional perspective, to make connection between country and with different regions, not working just with national authorities, which is obvious have to be done, but plus to this, to build this triangle, to invite into cooperation local city councils, local mayors, local territorial communities, local business, local NGOs, local environmental groups. It's very important to strengthen local democracy because it's something which helps us to stand in this war.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think those are all very important points that I'll take the responsibility to pass to the ambassadors. And of course, we would love to invite you at one of the meetings as well so that they can hear it from you directly. I think it's important. One of the challenges that I have is just ethically, is when we have delegations coming to Ukraine. And very often we struggle. Do we have a session? Do we introduce them to people who had been survivors of war crimes or not? And sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't. And sometimes, with children additionally, I struggle with that because is it the right thing to do? But on the other hand, I see how effective it is for people to hear it directly from the survivors. And then survivors have also told me it's important for them to be able to share their stories and know that they were heard and that they're not invisible. Do you think about this in those sort of integrity terms? And what's your view on this?
I understand these ethical concerns because sometimes you feel that you have to ask people to come and to tell their story, that to go through these very painful memories, and for sure, it's not show. It's not news for them. It's their life, and this ethical concerns present. But I also know that it's helped to change this reality. It's helped others who are going through the same experience to survive. For example, I always propose to delegations who contact Center for Civil Liberties, we can organize for you a meeting with survivors from Russian captivity and relatives of civilian hostages and prisoners of the war. And people from this delegation, they can forget meeting with top Ukrainian officials, but they will never forget that meeting. And they really want to do something. They start to understand something on the very human level, not on the level on the reports. Mm-hmm. And also, I know that it's important for people who went through the hell to understand that they can change situation, okay, not for them, but for others. Let me tell you one story. In 2014, the first victim of Russian war in Donbass, it was Volodymyr Rybak. It was a local deputy who was legally abducted when he asked to return Ukrainian flag to administrative building, and he was very severely tortured. I will not describe the details, but it was horrible how they tortured him to death. And we work on this case, and then just in 2 weeks, I got the call from one woman, and she told me, my name is Alena Rybak, I'm the wife of Volodymyr Rybak, and I stopped her. I said, I know who you are very well. I know the story of your heroic husband. And I was doubt why she called me. Probably she needs some help or some advice. And I was totally surprised when she told, I want to join the work that you are doing. I couldn't save my husband, but I want to save others. And this understanding of people who participate in this meeting, that they help to save others, it's very important.
That's I see that a lot, actually. I found that I've been meeting a lot with mothers who have lost their children on the war as soldiers or others. And maybe perhaps because I identify with them as a mother, and most of their kids are my children's age, and so they're adults, but they're still your babies, right? Mm-hmm. And so I identify with them, but I am no longer surprised. But I was the first few times when I saw how much strength they have, and what I mean by that is, they describe themselves as changed people. And for them, it's not just a purpose of life, but they have gone and continued their education and become psychologists to help others who are suffering the same, or join human rights organizations, or they do not sit at home. Most of them do not sit at home and feel sorry for themselves. They find strength. They see the unfairness and they want to do something about it. So in a very odd way, or maybe not so odd when you really understand, and you are someone who studies human nature, it has almost had the opposite effect of what Russia was trying to do. So if they were trying to intimidate and silence people, they have, in a strange way, done the opposite. Ukraine, from what I see, because I was here 13 years ago, have become much more active, much more engaged, whether at the local level, their community, people come back. So it's not just the war. You spoke about the revolution of dignity, for example, and you were involved in that as well. What has happened to the Ukrainian nation that woke them up? What do you think? What do you think is changing people here in Ukraine? Or maybe they haven't changed, but I leave that to you to answer.
I think that there is something very important in our DNA. If you open any social survey about Ukrainians, you will see that Ukrainians always put freedom in the first place of hierarchy of values. And that's why we have Revolution on Granite, then Orange Revolution, then Revolution of Dignity, and now when the whole world was confident that Ukraine has no potential to resist to such enormous opposing powers, that Putin will occupy Ukraine just in 3 or 4 days. But here we are, the 4 year of large-scale war, and we're still fighting. We're still fighting for the slightest chance for our children to live in peace, to live without fear of violence, to have a long-term perspective. And we are very honest in our fight because we are paying the highest price, our lives. So I think that for Ukrainians, freedom is not a value of self-determination or self-expression, as for a lot of other nations. For Ukrainians, freedom is a value of survival. It's survival value. Because this war, if we go into our history, it's not going for 12 years. This war is going for centuries. For centuries, Ukrainians are fighting to be independent country, but not Russian colony. And we was a part of Russian Empire for centuries, and all the century this fight was present. And that's why for Ukrainians, freedom is survival value, because we will vanish. We will not exist if we will not be so stubborn in our fight for freedom.
Thank goodness you are stubborn. It's important because as you know, my own history with Ukraine, I know what you mean. When you have Ukrainians leave Ukraine, it's amazing how active they are, even in other countries. And I know that there's a debate about people who leave, but they are making a difference too, many of them.
I was impressed. I came to Argentina and found people who was born in like 3rd generation in this country, and they speak with me Ukrainian language. And it was like miracle that Ukrainians who came to Argentina, they built this infrastructure to preserve Ukrainian language, Ukrainian culture for generations. It's amazing. And when I ask them why they are doing this from generation to generation, they told me that when their grandparents started to do this, it was the real threat that Ukraine will not exist anymore, because this policy, a genocidal policy of Russian Empire, was going for centuries, and for centuries Ukrainian language was persecuted, Ukrainian culture was persecuted. People who manifest their belonging to Ukrainian culture were physically exterminated. Writers, musicians, scientists, and priests. And that's why they have a task to preserve Ukraine abroad, while they don't have this guarantee that Ukraine will exist in the motherland. And it's something unbelievably inspirational, how you can change the future just with very small concrete steps. And then you, being in 2023, coming to Argentina and see Ukrainian diaspora who can speak with you your language.
Yes. And, sort of we're ending soon, but I do like the idea of ending on this very positive note that you're raising. Ironically, I find, too, that this war and the Russian aggression is actually bringing more attention of the world to what is Ukraine, who are Ukrainians, reading their books, watching their movies, listening to their poetry and songs. Now, everyone is wearing vyshyvankas and very Ukrainian clothing-inspired design. It's becoming popular worldwide. So, it's clear that Ukraine has always existed, but is now existed in the minds of other countries and people who might not have thought of Ukraine as an independent country. So I feel Russia has lost. Now we have to help Ukraine win determinately. So my last question to you, do you have a writer or a poet or an artist that inspires you, or a few? I imagine you have a few that you would like to recommend.
For sure, I have a lot, but probably I will use this opportunity to highlight one special book for me. It's a book of my friend, Ukrainian writer Victoria Melina. This book is unfinished because Victoria was killed by Russian missile when she was in eastern city Kramatorsk in cafe with her Colombian colleagues. And I lost my dearest friend. But this book was published, translated into 18 languages. And it's a rather good book. It received the prestigious international award in Great Britain, Orwell Award, and this book about women in this war. And I think it's very interesting dimension how to speak about Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, to highlight that bravery has no gender. And Victoria described different women, women who joined armed forces, women who take political decisions, women who document war crimes. And it's not always well known in the country people. In this book, she described a librarian from a small village in Kharkiv region and the battle of her, because this village is close to border with Russia, and Russians, they intensively shelling on this village. And then this village went through occupation, and then this village was released, but still under shelling. So to make long story short, this woman, librarian, she several times had to restore her library. And in this book, she told, I'm okay with it. I mean that there is something which you can't restore. It's a human life. But this is my mission. I will fight for library for this small village. And I will restore this library as long as it's needed. And it's very inspirational. It's like ordinary people doing extraordinary things, being librarian in a small village. And when you read this, you have this understanding, if she can, and I also can do it.
Thank you for sharing that. You're in the book as well. I've read the book. I have now gifted the book to dozens of people. We will add it to the podcast, and I will encourage everyone to gift this book for Christmas. It is a beautiful book. You mentioned that it's unfinished, but there's a certain beauty in that too, because you're watching somebody working through their thoughts, and then it becomes very clear to you that this person died before they completed this on a mission, that they came back. And the dedication of, I wish I met your friend, Victoria, because she sounds amazing. And hearing and seeing her from her own voice too is very, very powerful. So let me end by saying thank you very much for doing this podcast. You are a very critical voice for Ukraine, for human rights defenders, for civil society of Ukraine. I hope you continue to do that. I imagine it's very tiring and very difficult to leave the country, but it is making a difference. So thank you very much. Is there anything you would like to say before we end the podcast?
I would like also to share and to end on this, that I would never wish anyone to go through our experience, but these dramatic times provide Ukrainians the opportunity to express the best in us, to be courageous, to fight for freedom, to make difficult but right choices, to take burden of responsibility, and to help each other. And we are on the right side of this history. We get used to things through the categories of states and interstates organizations, but ordinary people have a much great power that they can even imagine.
Thank you. I've been speaking to Oleksandra Matviichuk. You've been listening to Off the Record. I'm Natalka Cmoc. Thank you very much for joining us.